All right, welcome everybody. We're going to kick off our first topic talk of the semester. My name is Graham Henshaw. Welcome to the Hub. For some of you, this might be the first time you've been to the Hub. If that's the case, welcome. We're glad you're here. I'm just going to share a couple of things about what's going on here, introduce our guest, and then I'm going to get out of the way and we're going to hear about the topic that we've teed up for you. So if you've been to the Hub before, this slide won't surprise you, but I'm going to ask every single person in this room to pull out your phone and take probably 10 seconds to scan the QR code and just register by putting your email in. I don't think it'll take you any more than 10 seconds. That'll let us know that you were here. If you've heard us before, you'll know that you'll also earn points for being here. Those points will accrue. You can then redeem those points for snacks in our super cool snack machine. And you're also in the running for the end of semester celebration. If you're at the most engaged level, you'll get to go to a lunch or a dinner with President Rowe. So don't forget to check in. I'm going to actually put another one here because I'm going to just leave that one up in case your phone was stuck in your pocket. There's another QR code, same QR code. Check in for this so that we know that you're here. So we have done something I think really important this semester to de-densify the number of events that we have. We have actually fewer events this semester than we did last semester, but we want to be really intentional about the events that we do tee up. And topic talk was one that we said we have to keep. We want to make sure that we have topic talks where we identify topics that we think are very important, and then we find experts who can speak to those. And today we have just that. And I'm going to get out of the way and Joel will take the stage and share with us about entrepreneurship through acquisition. And so we'll have a couple more of those throughout the semester, but not very many, because we really are trying to create the space for you to be here and think and act in entrepreneurial ways. So just know that if you look at the calendar, there's not going to be as many events as we had maybe in the fall if you came around before. But the events that we do have, you want to make sure that you come to. Okay? So with that, I'm going to introduce Joel. So I'm glad that we have Joel. We're excited because entrepreneurship through acquisition is something that increasingly is in vogue, is a conversation that I've been having, more so in the MBA and graduate halls of Miller Hall, but we wanted to tee up that conversation here. Joel's a Virginia-based attorney and a William & Mary Law alum. Most of our topic talk speakers this semester will be alumni. And so you can ask about his experience at William & Mary. He's closed hundreds of small business deals. So he's definitely coming to us with experience doing exactly what he's going to talk about. He's also the author of a book. You saw the book on the screen a second ago. Here's the deal. Everything you wish a lawyer would tell you about buying a small business. I love the title of that book. He's got extensive experience speaking at business schools, speaking at things just like this. He's on podcasts. He's got another book that's on our shelves. And he brings a lot of insights about this topic of entrepreneurship through acquisition, which is an alternative to starting from scratch. Many of you might be thinking about, I want to do entrepreneurial things, but that hurdle of creating something brand new is a big one to get over. And so he's going to talk about a different pathway to entrepreneurship that comes through acquiring a business. So with that, I will welcome Joel. Thanks for being here. I'll sit for you too. All right.
So, okay, I think got it off mute. Graham basically told you everything I'm already going to talk about. So I'm excited to be here because I was talking to Stephanie earlier, I think, and this is a topic that it's not just a topic, it's a hot topic. And I'm really excited that it's the first topic of the semester because it is a different approach, a different path to entrepreneurship than a more traditional start from scratch approach. It's being talked about all over the place. And this is the first time that anybody's invited us to talk about it in Virginia. We've talked about it at University of Illinois, Columbia Business School. We've been to conferences at Duke and Georgetown and University of Pennsylvania. We're going to go to Darden, UVA in a couple of weeks. So we're really excited that people in Virginia are starting to talk about entrepreneurship through acquisition. It's a lot to say, so we're just going to use the acronym ETA. ETA. Yeah, so let's kind of jump into it real quickly. Graham already talked to you a little bit. Everybody keeps asking me if I brought a copy of my book. I didn't. I'm not prepared. I went to my office yesterday and I realized I didn't have any copies. But we'll send some up in a week or so when they come in. So if you're interested, you can take a look. But the book has been a lot of fun. It's introduced us to the ETA ecosystem. And we've been in that ecosystem doing legal work for about 7 years now. Before we did this work before, we just didn't know that it was called ETA. I've been helping people buy and sell businesses for over 25 years. But there's this community, and we'll talk more at the very end about how you can learn more about the ETA ecosystem and maybe even get plugged into that as well. So one of the reasons why it's a hot topic is because there's something called, everybody calls it the silver tsunami. Sometimes it's called the gray wave. But basically, there is a massive wealth transfer that's occurring and will be occurring for the next 10 to 15 years. People age 55 and plus, you can see the stats, I'm not going to read it, but they make up a big part of it, and they own a lot of small businesses. And I saw an article the other day that said that there's approximately $7 to $10 trillion in small businesses that will be transferred or shut down. That's the other thing that's happening is that approximately 15,000 or 1,500, not 15,000, 1,500 businesses are either shutting themselves down or getting transferred every day. That's the statistic, at least. I'm not a stats guy, so I look at that and I think that can't be real. But anyway, I guess it averages all out if you look at all the numbers. So that's why it's hot. People have realized that, and I love the way Graham put it, that it's the barrier or the hurdle to getting into ETA is perhaps lower than the barrier or the hurdle of starting a business from scratch. So this is the traditional startup model. I have a client that I had, when he was in business school, he and his friend decided that there needed to be a solution for students, and they came up with the idea to create a electric scooter rental company, like Lime. It wasn't Lime, but it was, and they ended up developing this company while they were in business school. And then when they graduated with their MBAs, they just kept going with this business. And they ran this business for 11 years. And they went in all over the Northeast in different college campuses. And they eventually got acquired. So he exited the business. What was interesting was that when they exited the business, the company that bought them was a bicycle rental company, not a scooter rental company. But the reason why they wanted their business was because they had built a really nice software application that could then be used to manage the bike rentals instead. So they went through that traditional, came up with an idea, did the research and development, created the minimally viable product, got their funding, all their different, capital raises and things like that, built their product and their brand, launched, operate, grew, and then it took them about 11 years from the start to the finish to exit. So that's the traditional role, or the traditional model, and that's great. I've spent a lot of time also in my career helping people do this type of thing. Years ago, one of my best friends worked in a large, like a Fortune 100 company. There was a huge merger, change in management. He literally was moved from close to the C-suite all the way down to the basement of the building. And so he came to me and he said, I think I've got an idea. We're going to start a business. He was a very early adopter of data analytics for sales forces and creating software to help apply that concept to companies that had large sales forces that were selling large catalogs of products, like medical supply businesses and veterinary supply businesses and things like that. So I helped him start his LLC, contract with coders, protect his intellectual property, things like that. And then approximately 25 years later, he exited and he sold to a much larger company. So I've seen that happen. It's a great path to entrepreneurship. I want to back up though. I want to tell you one other quick thing because I want to make sure I get you all, I want to entice you. I'm going to tell you at the end about some, if you're interested, some places where you can go look, some resources to go look at. Stanford Business School has been in the ETA. They're kind of the grandfather of ETA, and they have about 40 years of resources and data that they've been crunching. And one of the things that you're going to read if you go read some of the Stanford information is that people are excited about ETA because of the potential or the average return on investment. So from what I understand, the average return on investment if you invest in the stock market is about 9 or 10%. But Stanford crunches their data and tells us that the average return on investment in the ETA ecosystem is 34%. So again, you can see why people get really interested in this, not just people who want to actually acquire and operate the businesses, but also investors who want to invest in something that's going to bring them a pretty significant return on their investment. In other words, the upside for the investors is a lot more attractive in the ETA space than the upside in the traditional model. All right, here's the ETA model. The ETA model is search. And business people are, like when I talk to business schools like MBA programs, this is what they're focused on, search. How do I find the business that I want to acquire? And how long is that going to take? There are a lot of different approaches to search. And frankly, as a lawyer, I don't get involved typically in the search process. They usually come to me right about in this phase right here. But I do spend a lot of time talking to people and learning about their experiences. Search is kind of like the wild, wild west, right? Right now, especially because it's such a hot area, you'll find lots of people, brokers, buyer-side brokers, finders. You'll find websites like Biz Buy Sell. You'll find other websites that list businesses for sale, brokers who have their own websites that list businesses for sale. So there are seller-side brokers. You'll find lots of coaches out there who are willing to coach people on how to not only do cold calls, and that's a big part of finding and searching is doing cold calls. And what do you say when you email somebody or search somebody who's, or contact somebody, call them who's maybe in their mid-60s and they own a business that's throwing off about $1 to $2 million in EBITDA each year. How do you approach them and convince them that you're the person that they want to sell to? So search is a topic in and of itself that we could spend, and it wouldn't really be me. You would want somebody from the business school perhaps to talk about search, or somebody who's actually gone through the search process. But I have seen people go through search for many years, and I have clients, for example, who have found 5, 6, 7 companies that we've gotten down the road on, and then we've passed on them for one reason or another. So search can be lengthy, it can be challenging, it can be difficult. It is the wild, wild west. There are a lot of people out there that you'll see who are willing to sell you an online course about how to search, or will want to sell you coaching services about how to search, or something like that. I mean, it's kind of crazy out there right now. But that's where it starts. A traditional search, and this is an ETA kind of term of art, I guess. Traditional search is something that the Stanford Business School created. A traditional search, when somebody says, I'm a traditional searcher, I'm going to do a traditional search, what they're telling you is that they're going to create a limited liability company. They're going to go look for some investors who are going to give them some money so that they can, usually it's about maybe $300,000 to $400,000, so that they can spend the next 2 years as a full-time, that's their full-time job, is searching for a company. And what they're going to do is they're going to bring whatever companies they find, they're going to have a search thesis. So they're gonna have written out an approach to like what industries are they going to search in, what amount of gross revenue or EBITDA or what kind of factors are they going to apply to their search. And that's when they pitch that to their investors and they pitch their experience to their investors, then their investors will give them this money and allow them to go out and do a search for a year or two. It's usually 2 years. And as they find companies that meet those search parameters, they will come back and present to the investors. And if the investors give the thumbs up and say, yes, we want you to acquire this company, then the investors have a choice. They can either put more money in and get a preferred return on investment, or they can just stay where they're at. Usually they put more money in. And who are these investors? I mean, I have seen lots of family offices into this type of investment. In fact, I helped sell a business recently in the Virginia Beach area where the buyer on the other side was a family office that was owned by the family that owns the Kansas City Chiefs. So that's where the money came from. I did another sale a couple of years ago where the buyer, the searcher, was a 31-year-old MBA graduate. He had 13 family offices who invested I think it was 23 family offices that invested about $13 million to help him purchase the business. And he coupled that with an SBA loan and with some of his own money, very little of his own money, frankly, and bought a very nice business and walked in as a 31-year-old as the CEO of this business. So once you find the search, that's what traditional search, most of the clients that I deal with are self-funded. In other words, they're doing the search using their own money, money that they've saved up, or they've got a full-time job that they're using to supplement, and they search at night or part-time or something like that. That's what self-funded means. It just means you don't have any investors behind you who are helping support you in your search. Once you find a business, you're going to go to the next step where you're going to evaluate and analyze the business. You're going to sign an NDA, a non-disclosure agreement. And you may think, I've been having some conversations online the last couple of days about the most ridiculous things some attorneys have been seeing in recent NDAs. You should have somebody take a look at it. If you're going to sign an NDA, take a look at it. I had somebody want my client to sign an NDA a couple of weeks ago that said if the buyer, if the seller didn't pay the broker's commission, that the buyer would agree to pay the broker's commission. We're like, no, we're not doing that. Silly. The CIM acronym stands for Confidential Information Memorandum. And that's a document that if the seller is represented by a broker, you're going to get some sort of, they call it a SIM. You'll get the SIM, and that'll have a lot of the basic information to help you decide whether you want to go to the next step. And the next step is actually to give them a letter of intent. And now this is it's part of it is, most of it's non-binding, but there are some binding legal aspects to it as well. A letter of intent is not required by law, but nowadays, before 7 years ago, I was hardly ever using a letter of intent. But since then, I've probably closed 150 deals where we've used letters of intent. One of the reasons why is because lenders want them and brokers want them. They want to see these letters of intent. And the letter of intent is where you're going to kind of break out the most significant aspects of like the purchase price, who the parties are, how the purchase price is going to be paid, what the contingencies on closing are going to be, what kind of post-closing transition the seller is going to give to you to help you, step into the business and operate it, things like that. So the letter of intent is usually where I get really heavily involved. That's I have a timeline on the next slide. Once the letter of intent has been signed, then you usually are going to have, the searcher is going to have about 60 days. I've seen 30-day due diligence periods, but 60 I think is reasonable. I've seen as many as 90. If I can, if we're at 30 and the seller's adamant that it's only going to be 30, I'll try and get 45. Give me a little something. right? But that's going to be an opportunity for the searcher to come into the business and kick the tires, see everything, the books, the tax returns, ask questions, walk the site, walk the location, learn the process, all these things. Part of the letter of intent, one of the important things about the letter of intent as well is that there's an exclusivity aspect to it, and that's binding on both parties. And basically what that gives the searcher, the buyer, the comfort that they're not going to get into a bidding war, that essentially the seller is going to take the business off the market until we get to a certain milestone. So we want the business, sometimes in my letters of intent, I try and get them, if it's listed somewhere on the internet, to delist it as well, but I get a lot of pressure not, a lot of kickback on that. But essentially, we want that exclusivity so that we can, because we're going to spend money and invest in due diligence and in looking for funding and things like that. Due diligence, there's a financial side to due diligence, and generally I tell my searchers, hey, get your financial due diligence done first, because there's no sense spending any money on a lawyer if the financial stuff doesn't work out, right? Because if you know right away that the finances look terrible, and I've seen that happen where information wasn't shared in the SIM at the evaluate and analyze level, and it comes out as we dig deeper into the books, and we call it deal law. And we never get, that way we've never even gotten to legal due diligence. Legal due diligence is part of the due diligence process where I'm, as the attorney, coming in and looking at all the contracts, can they be transferred, or are there conditions that have to be met in order to transfer them? We live in an area where there are a lot of defense contractors, and federal government contracts cannot be transferred in an asset sale. So you have to structure the deal differently. You have to structure it as an equity purchase. And even in those instances, you may have to go to the government agency and get their permission. But these are the kinds of things that I'm looking for, in the legal due diligence. You're also, during the due diligence period, you're looking for money to pay the purchase price. And so typically right now, SBA 7A loans are super hot. Before 2017, I think I had closed in my whole career maybe 3 to 5 SBA loans. Since 2017, since ETA has heated up so much, I've probably closed 100 SBA loans. SBA, and there are a couple reasons for that. SBA 7A is, the lenders have gotten very good at doing the SBA loans. And there are specialty lenders out there who will do, all they do is SBA 7A loans. And so I know who those lenders are. They're great to work with. They do a really good job. And all these SBA lenders are cash flow lenders. They're not collateral-based lenders. In other words, they don't want to take, they don't want to make sure that you have a lot of collateral like hard assets and real estate as collateral for the loan. What they want to make sure is that you have really good cash flow so that you can service the debt. That's what they're looking for. They're not going to lend, if you come at it with a lot of collateral and say, hey, I have all these assets that you can take a lien in, they're not that interested in that. But if you come at them and say, look at the cash flow that this business throws off, we can totally service your debt. And they're very excited about that. And they've gotten very good at it. But that's part of what you'll be doing during due diligence as well. You'll be going to these lenders, you'll be giving them applications, they'll be looking at, considering your applications and giving you commitment letters, and you'll be, securing or putting that funding in place so that when you're ready to close, the money's there. All right, then this next step after due diligence, you've decided everything's going great, the company looks great, the lender is happy, they're going to loan you the money. Then that's when you really start to you got to spend a lot of time with me because I'm going to draft all the documents. The purchase agreement, there's probably about another 15 closing documents that have to be drafted, the bill of sale, the assignment of intellectual property, the assignment of contracts, the assignment of leases, the non-competition agreement. all these types of agreements get drafted as part, but we're going to spend a huge amount of time on the purchase agreement. There's going to be some back and forth between me and the seller's attorney. Now, I've done this a lot. There are some very kind of customary and standard ways to draft these agreements. So we're typically drafting more middle of the road so that we don't have to spend a lot of time, butting heads over, negotiating the purchase agreement. There's still going to be negotiation, but depending on who the attorneys are on the other side, if they're experienced in ETA, everybody's going to kind of know that we're going to end up in the middle, and we're going to know what the middle is. I'm doing a negotiation right now. I spent 2 hours on the phone yesterday, and I'm just hitting my head on the brick wall because the attorney on the other side, I just feel like that person has never negotiated one of these kind of deals, and we're negotiating things that are like the seller is an LLC, and I want the owner of that LLC, the founder, to sign a non-competition agreement. That's only fair, right? Because why would I let that guy sell the business to me and then be able to just walk out? He said, well, I'll have my LLC sign a non-compete, but not me. And I'm like, that doesn't work. I don't care about your LLC. I care about you. You're the guy who's going to go out and compete. So, all right. Then once we get through that, we'll close. Closing is simply an exercise where all the documents are going to get signed, the money's going to flow, and then you're going to walk into the business and it's yours. Last year, I had a client who was an MBA student at Georgetown University. On Friday, he walked across the stage and got his MBA, and on Monday, he walked into his business as the CEO of the business. Because he had found, during his last semester of MBA school, he did his search. He did a self-funded search. We went through this whole process of analyzing and doing the due diligence. We drafted and negotiated all the purchase agreements. The Monday after he graduated, we signed everything in the morning, and he was on site and walked in and introduced as the president of the company. About 35 employees, I think it was about 2.5 million in EBITDA each year, and yeah, I'm thrilled. And then 6 months later, we were at the Southeastern Entrepreneur Through Acquisition conference, and he was on a panel speaking about his experience of walking in and buying the business and becoming the operator. Now, after that, there are some different approaches to ETA. One of the approaches is kind of a flip approach, where you might hold the company for 5 to 7 years and then exit it, or use the company, your first buy, as leverage to buy your next business. So there are people who have strategies where they create like a holding company, and they want to, they have they're going to roll up like every landscaping business in the Southeast or something like that. That's pretty ambitious. We were at Wharton last year, and there was a guy on the panel. He and his buddy from business school decided in business school that they were going to buy funeral homes, and I don't remember how, Jenny, you remember how long it was? They had, after a couple of years, maybe 5 or 7 years, they had rolled up 40 funeral homes. And so that's an approach. But another approach, which is more typical, is that you just hold and grow. You just operate and grow. And then, when you're ready to retire, perhaps you exit out. Okay. Let's talk quickly about timeline. This is a question that searchers always ask me: how long is this going to take? The search itself could take years. I've got some clients who have signed 5 or 6 letters of intent, and we've passed on every one of those businesses when we've got into due diligence. And you can see that it's, even if due diligence is 60 days, that's 2 months right there in and of itself. If you sign 5 letters of intent and go through sequentially, and you go through 5 due diligence experiences, you've easily gotten to a year at that point. The LOI goes very quickly, maybe a week once you decide you want to do it. Due diligence could be 30, 45, 60, 90 days. The purchase agreement, closing documents, and the closing. Really what I tell people is between letter of intent and closing to budget or plan on about 4 to 6 months. Most of the transactions that I'm closing are in the 4-month period. 6 months is on the outer edge if things kind of get kind of wonky. I've closed deals faster, but I really don't like it. I hate to be rushed. We closed the deal last year in 60 days from letter of intent to closing, because the other side I was on the seller side, and the buyer was a private equity firm, and they just pushed and pushed and pushed us hard, but we did it. So that's kind of the timeline. That's what to expect. Costs will go quickly. Search, it really can be, whatever you make of it. If you're able to find investors to back your search, then you might be able to, that $300,000 to $400,000 that people invest are to pay a salary for you. So you may be able to pay yourself about $100,000, $130,000 a year as a salary, and then that money is also used for you to travel. You don't really need to hire a lot of professionals during that time, but if you do, that's what the money's there for. Where do people get the money? Well, their savings, or their retirement accounts. A ROBS it's a rollover business startup. So you take your 401k and you roll it over, and you, instead of investing in public market stock, you invest in your own corporation. You buy the stock of your own corporation, and you bring that money from your retirement account into your new business, and you use it that way. It's the same thing with an IRA. It's called a self-directed IRA, where you're able to take your IRA and you have to set it up a certain way to satisfy the IRS. But that's what capital raise. You might go out and find investors to help you, and there are investors out there. There are investment funds that look for searchers. They're actively looking for searchers that they can back. But you also might get money. One of the first deals I ever did when I was a young attorney was to help somebody buy a Cinnabon franchise, probably 25 or more years ago. And he raised his money from his father-in-law and from 4 of his college buddies. At the time, he only needed $250,000. That seems like not much right now, but that's all he needed. And man, I mean, it's like owning a Chick-fil-A franchise. It's like printing money, So, what kind of professional fees are you going to pay? You got to have a lawyer. You got to have a CPA. There may be a broker involved if you have a buyer side broker. Otherwise, if there's a broker that's representing the seller is going to pay that broker's commission. You don't have to worry about that. Lawyer fees, kind of the conventional wisdom is that can range anywhere between like 0.5% to 1.5% of the purchase price. There are attorneys out there right now. I'm still a little bit more traditional, where I just charge by the hour, but I've done so many deals that I can give you a budget. For a deal that's in the $1 to $3 million purchase price range, I would probably tell you to budget about $15,000 in attorney's fees. You can see that if I told you that I wanted 1.5%, that would be more if it was a $3 million deal. CPAs and the broker is always going to take somewhere between 6 and 10%. But again, if you're the buyer and the broker's on the seller side, you don't have to worry about that. That comes out of the seller's cash. You're going to need to form an entity, typically an LLC. That's what everybody's using. And there's some money involved in that, but it shouldn't be a lot. And then you need post-closing working capital. This is a really big issue. And one of the things you're going to learn as you search is that you may buy a company that has a collection cycle of 30, 60, or 90 days. So you may walk into that company, like I've helped people buy and sell healthcare practices, and you may walk into that company and not be the work you do on day one when you own it is not going to be collected until 90 days later at the earliest. So what are you going to do during that gap? You need some working capital. It could come from your SBA loan. You could get a line of credit where you get an extra $100,000, $150,000 on top, or what's kind of become more traditional now is that we essentially buy working capital from the seller. So we tell the seller, hey, you got to leave $100,000 in cash in the business, or transfer it over to us. That's 25 years ago. That would have been never. People would have just said, you're crazy. We're not doing that. But now sellers are realizing that they may need to do that in order to make the sale happen. The other thing we didn't talk about in funding, we talked about the loan. I've mentioned SBA loans, but seller financing is a big hot issue right now too. So the SBA may loan you 90% of the purchase price. You have to come up with the other 10%. You may not have that money. And so if you can convince the seller to take a promissory note for 5%, okay, then that's going to help you get over the finish line. So seller financing is big. You're going to see a lot of stuff online if you dig deep into this about how to buy a business with $0 down. If you ask me, have I done that? Yes, I have. I have represented buyers who have bought business with zero money down, giving a promissory note to the seller for the entire purchase price. But in 25 years, I've probably done it 3 times, and those times have all been when there's been some sort of personal relationship with the seller, like it's a key employee who's buying the business or something like that. All right, if you want to dig deeper into this is what I would do. I would go to LinkedIn. There's lots of talk on LinkedIn, Twitter as well. I put one guy up here, Samil Jarawala. He's one of my very favorites. He has a fund called the FETA Fund, F-E-T-A, but he puts something up on LinkedIn almost every day that's geared towards searchers, like tips on how to make your search good, how to evaluate businesses, things like that. Samil's great. The other thing I would do is, you can network, you can talk to, there's tons of people to talk to, and you can meet them online. So meeting Samil, following him is a great way to get started. But there are books out there. That's my book, that's a plug. But really, you don't need to read my book until you get close to a deal. The other 2 books are Buy Then Build and the Harvard Business Review, Buying a Small Business. They're kind of like the Bibles of this ETA movement from a business perspective. My book complements them from a legal perspective. The other thing that you really should think about doing is, if you're really interested in this, go to one of these ETA conferences. There's one coming up at UVA in September, right, Jennifer? Yeah, September 5th and 6th. It's right in the middle here. So there's a consortium between UVA, University of North Carolina, Georgetown, and Duke University. And they put on this thing called the Southeast Entrepreneurship Through Acquisition Conference. We've been to it twice now. It's really good. It's in the Mid-Atlantic. And you're going to see, essentially, the people who come speak at these are kind of like circuit riders. You'll see a lot of the same attorneys, investors, searchers. And if you are really serious about finding investors, these ETA conferences are a good place to network and connect with investors as well. And a lot of times the investors will have dedicated rooms where you can sign up for a 20-minute consult and go in and talk to them. So, CETA is probably the most accessible thing for us. But Harvard is a huge one. Booth Catalog up at the University of Chicago is massive. Yeah, that's, if you're interested in learning more about this, they're usually 2 or 3 days long, and they have all these panels and opportunities for you to connect with people and things like that. So great stuff. All right, I'm done, I think. What questions can I answer for? What do you ask? Yes.
Quick question.
Wait for the
When
mic.
you did that
Oh,
letter
he's
of
got
intent-
a mic. Oh, look at that.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
You could hear me before. Dang it. Anyhow, when you do the offer, the letter of intent, is there some sort of deposit or
No.
earnest cash?
No, don't pay a deposit.
And the
I'm
guys
just telling you
still
right
willing
now.
to take it off the market?
If they tell you that they want to, if you're buying a business that's priced under $5-6 million, and they're telling you they want a deposit, don't do it. It's a red flag. It's a
Right,
red
but
flag.
will he take it off the market?
Sure. Yeah.
He's still
Yeah,
willing to do
yeah.
that.
Yep. Brokers, so there's a lot of what I would call creep into ETA lately. What I've observed over the last 7 or 8 years. Brokers who aren't experienced in buying and selling small businesses, they may be really well experienced in commercial real estate or residential real estate. They're coming into the space and they're trying to bring those types of concepts into the space. But they're not, that doesn't work. I had a broker in Florida. He wanted not only a deposit, but a non-refundable deposit. And he wanted the purchase price, the purchase agreement drafted and approved within 5 days after signing the letter of intent. Okay, we didn't sign. We told him he's crazy. Nobody's doing that, right? It's just ridiculous. But what I do see people starting to ask for deposits. I have a deal right now that I'm working on where they ask for a deposit. I told my client, don't do it, but he did it anyway. I told him, if you're going to do it at about 10% of what they're asking for. He did it all. I don't know why, right? But no, if they're asking for a deposit, that's a concept from a different type of transaction. And that's not the way we do it. So it's a great question. They'll take it off. They should take it off the market.
Yeah. Quick comment on that. I'm a broker. I'm sorry. Some of the reason that's.
Don't read my book because you're going to hear things. Brokers come in different flavors. Let's talk about that.
Just to speak to like some of the motive for that request sometimes, coming from like the IBBA is the marketing expense that goes into getting buyer leads.
Yeah.
To cut that off for you to have time to think about it, the deposit protects the.
Well, but okay, so I'm going to argue back against that because my guy is expending money as well. I hear the seller argument all the time. We're spending money, blah, 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 blah. My guy's spending a lot of money too. He's already spent a lot of money to get here. Okay. Hopefully you guys have vetted my guy well enough or girl so that you're comfortable enough to move forward with the letter of intent. If you think that the deal's not serious enough by the letter of intent phase, or that you're not comfortable enough that you have to have money for a small deal. Now, a bigger deal is a different story. But a small deal is, I don't know. It's just not. The other reason I see it done a lot more, and I'm going to tell you why I think you should get a deposit. That's because it is the wild, wild west, and so you're probably getting hundreds and hundreds of inquiries about businesses from people who are submitting searchers who are submitting 100 inquiries to brokers every day. Right? They've got a bot set up or something like that. And you're having to spend your time wading through all that, trying to figure out what's real, who's serious, who's got the resources to do it. And I feel you on that because I'm getting those too. I'm getting people who want to talk to me for an hour and a half about they want to buy a business, but they don't have any money. And can I walk them through the process? And will I cut my fees and all that stuff? It's rough out there.
And one other way that to get them to agree to not request a deposit might be to concede letting them keep the listing active.
Yeah, and I'm cool with that. I mean, I'll ask for it to be delisted, but if you tell me no, we're gonna leave it up there, that's fine. And you can even take offers. You just can't act on them.
That prevents them from having to start from scratch with momentum.
Yes.
Yeah.
I get it. Yeah.
Some businesses have critical dependency on subcontractors, maybe key employees.
Right.
And, they could even be family related.
Yes.
So you can't be sure that they're going to stay in place. In some cases, you might want to acquire the subcontractor at the same time.
Oh, that's an interesting idea.
How would you deal with a situation like that?
Well, typically, I mean, absolutely. That's an issue in almost every transaction. Like, are we going to be able to transition the business in a way that we're not going to lose revenue, that we're not going to lose customers, things like that. And that maybe, we might make it a contingency on closing that we get satisfactory employment agreements with the 5 key employees, or that we get the subcontractors to agree that they're going to stay on with us. But those discussions typically would happen just prior to closing and would be a contingency to closing, so that if we didn't get those, we wouldn't close. So,
How do you ensure that you've identified those critical dependencies? Though?
yeah, that's gonna happen during due diligence, I hope. You know, if you're a good searcher, that should be happening during due diligence. So can I go back to the broker real quickly? Only because, there's another aspect that I think people should know about. You may ask for deposits, but you may also see buyers asking for what they call breakage fees. Are you seeing that now?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't personally had that, but I've heard
Yeah.
about it, so.
Yeah, so that's a mid-market creep. So in mid-market deals, and we're talking deals like $20 to $50 million, it wouldn't be uncommon for a buyer to say, hey, if I find something during due diligence that you didn't tell me about, and I break the deal, you have to reimburse me for my legal fees, my attorney, my CPA fees. And sometimes they may just put a number in, $15,000, $20,000. And so I have buyers now, when we're doing letters of intent, ask me if we can put a breakage fee in. And my advice is don't. It's like asking for a deposit. Like, we just don't do it. And they say, well, I'm gonna spend money. Well, so is the seller. The seller, everybody's gonna carry their own water until we get this deal done. You know, that's just, and we have to kind of trust each other. If we don't, that's not a great way to start out. Yeah.
How much does the SBA loan to people?
How much do they loan?
Like, is there a maximum amount
Yeah.
of money that the
Well,
SBA loans?
it
If I
depends.
run it by a business,
Yeah,
a
it
small
de-
business?
Yeah, it
And
depends.
what is a small business?
That's my wife. She can be very surgical in her questions to me. But I think what she's trying to get me to say, she knows the answer already. I don't know what a small business is, but how to define that. But I will tell you that if you're going to get a loan from the SBA, under the SBA 7A program, 5 million is the limit. That's as much as you're going to get. That doesn't mean that the purchase price has to be 5 million or less. It just means you're going to get 5 million. So if you can come up with other, I mean, I'm about to help somebody buy a company for 6.5 million. And the 5 is going to come from the SBA, but the other 1.5 is going to come from seller financing, from investors, and from their own cash. So great question. Jennifer's telling me we got to stop, but I'm gonna look at Graham and ask him what he wants to do.
Just one quick question, and I think it kind of piggybacks on the last. Can you just characterize some of the businesses that you have helped people buy? Like, what are the types of businesses that people are buying at the range that?
That's a great question, but it's really just about anything. So trades are really popular, right? Like plumbing businesses, landscaping, roofing, gutter businesses. They're real popular right now. Although some are kind of going out of favor. You should ask the broker too. But landscaping is kind of like, people are kind of sour on landscaping businesses, and HVAC too a little bit as well. I've helped people buy and sell wellness businesses, like yoga coaching businesses, supplements that are sold on Amazon, mushroom supplements. I had a company that had 7 different secret recipe mushroom supplements that and you would be surprised how much that company sold for. I helped somebody sell a YouTube channel, okay? A YouTube channel from a very well-known cook, chef, and yeah, I mean, like 1,000 videos, blah, 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 anyway, crazy. Manufacturing businesses, small manufacturing businesses like specialty automotive parts, healthcare businesses, dentist office, podiatrists, veterinarians. I'm just trying to think, marketing businesses, online marketing agencies, brick and mortar marketing agencies. I mean, as I keep thinking, I can keep going, but anybody, yeah, I'm running out of time. So I keep getting that.
Thanks for doing
Okay.
that. I think that might be. Is that it?
I'll stick around, so if anybody wants to talk afterwards.
Thank you very much. Yeah. So thanks so much for doing that. That was really fascinating. I think by the show of hands, that all the questions, you're probably gonna get mobbed when we wrap up. So I'll be quick. Thanks everybody for being here. Really glad that you all showed up. Really excited that we had this turnout for Topic Talk. Again, we've got several more topic talks as the semester unfolds. They're gonna be about every other week. So just, you can put that on your calendars. I think there's a couple more slides that might talk about some of these. This one isn't a topic talk, right? This is a special event next week, if I'm not mistaken, with calendar. We talked about how to get financing just a couple of minutes ago. We're gonna have someone from the SBDC talk about that next week. So you can come to this event and learn about where you might be able to access capital from someone from the SBDC. And in case you didn't know that, we have someone here from the SBDC every week on Wednesdays, I think. So that's a resource at the hub if you want to talk to someone from that organization. Next week, we don't have a topic talk, but we do have a rocket pitch. So we rotate between topic talks and rocket pitch this semester. So come out to hear from pitchers. You can sign up. I don't know if we have any slots left for sign up, but you scan that QR code, you could sign up to pitch. Otherwise, just come and be in the audience. That's how that works. I think there might be one more. We have very limited spots available for an excursion that we're going on this semester. And this is only a couple of weeks from now. We're heading over to Jefferson Lab and NASA. And we're gonna sort of get to be kids in a candy store, so to speak. We're gonna get to look at some of their intellectual property that you might think about commercializing. They do a lot of that, and we're gonna sort of get a behind the scenes look at their portfolio that they have there. And this is not gonna be extended to 2 days, but 1 day is actually gonna be out there. And then the next day, they're gonna be here helping us think through what we saw. So I believe. Oh, there's more. Wait, there's more. I don't even know what this one is about. I think this is everything that we do at the hub. What I want to say about this is that something that I mentioned earlier. We want you to take action. There's lots of ways that you can take action at the hub. One is to connect with a mentor. I see that's listed on there. We have a couple of mentors here. Can you raise your hands? So there's 3 mentors out of a 25-person mentor network. You might have a question. Reach out to them. They're a resource to help you find out what you might do next in some kind of entrepreneurial adventure that you're on. We have seed funding. Maybe you have something that you're working on, but you need a little bit of cash to work on a prototype or go to a conference that would help you learn about it. You can apply for seed funding and we can help you get that next step accomplished. And then we also want to put you in positions where you can work in these small businesses and startups. So we have internship funding as well, and funding available if you want to work on your own venture over the summer. All that to say, we got a lot of resources at the hub, and we are here to help you make progress on your ideas. All right, with that, I'll say thanks for being here and see you next week.